Hello there, and welcome to the latest episode of this podcast series from Aid to the Church in Need Ireland, Faith Under Fire, where we try to shine a light on forgotten stories and particularly Christian communities around the world who are struggling at the moment. If you haven't already, I really would encourage you to hit the like button, hit the follow button, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends as well. I'm really pleased to say in this special Holy Week episode of the Faith Under Fire podcast that we are delighted to be joined by a very special guest and no stranger to Ireland, Archbishop Bashar Warda. He's the Chaldean Archbishop of Erbil in northern Iraq. Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. It's glad to have you. To be with you again.
And maybe if I can start by asking you, because I think this is something that confuses a lot of Irish people. Irish people, they look to the Middle East and, they see a liturgy that is a little bit different from ours. They see sometimes that the vestments are different and they assume that all the Christians in the Middle East are Orthodox, for example. Can you tell us a little bit about the Chaldean Catholic Church and the concept of Eastern Rite Catholics, who, of course, are fully in communion with the Pope, but just not Roman Catholics as we would understand them?
Yes, as you know, Christianity begins here by the end of the first century. And due to the what we call political separation between the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire, somehow the churches of the East grow. I can't say independently 100% because a lots of the common statements of faith, for example, the creed and other statements, theological statements, was shared among these two empires, two churches here, but somehow grow independently, and it went more and more to the east, up to China, also to the Gulf states. By the 9th century, when Islam came, that church was a bit squeezed, and to certain centers. For example, we lost completely the Gulf states, where Christianity, for example, was flourished there. The number of the dioceses shrinked. But we continued. By the 1553, a group of priests and monks traveled to Rome and shared the faith with the Catholic Church. And this new group of the Church of the East was called the Chaldeans, the Chaldean Church, which means, so whenever you hear the name the Chaldean Church, means we are Catholic. However, we have a different liturgy in a way, and also the forma. We use the Neo-Aramaic Church. We still keep some of the old Aramaic text in the liturgy. But as the Second Vatican, declared, these liturgies are rich in the symbols and in the theological statements and the reflections. And it encouraged the churches to keep and maintain these liturgies, and of course to try to make it in a way available. And that's why, for example, if you visit our churches, you would see so many people also participating in chanting and praying in the Mass.
And they're praying in the language of Jesus.
Yes. Especially in most of the churches in Iraq, especially when it comes to Kurdistan, to the north part of Iraq, and also Turkey, also in Iran, you would hear that Neo-Aramaic. Of course, it developed, but it's still of the same roots of Aramaic language. Yes.
And slightly off topic, Archbishop, but it is equally important as this is going out to an Irish audience. I believe you are an honorary Irishman of sorts. You spent a few years in Dundalk, of all places, in the mid-1990s. Tell us how that came about.
Well, it was really one of the graced and blessed experience to be there. That was my first travel after being. I was ordained in 1993 as a priest within the Chaldean Church. Then I joined the Redemptorists and then they were looking around to find where I could do the novitiate. And finally, there was a place in Ireland where there were 3 novices candidates, and then they've asked me to travel. I arrived in December 1995 to Dublin, Dublin 6, where we have the Marionella house at that time, where I think most of you know that. And I spent a few months learning English, which was really very challenging. I'm not good at learning languages, and for me, the first 3 months was really, really difficult. But I must say it's because of you and the kindness that the brothers have showed me, and my teacher, Therese, and everyone was really helping me to learn quickly. And so to start the novitiate program in Dundalk in September 96. And it was also a time for me to travel around to Dundalk, to Limerick, to I mean, so many places, to Belfast, and yeah, so many places we went around, and we saw and experienced the faith, and we participated in many novenas, and that was also a time to know more and more about the Catholic Church and the Christianity in Ireland. Yeah, it's really still kept. All the memories is here.
Many Irish people, of course, have very fond memories of Redemptorist missions and solemn novenas in their parishes. They really were a great time of grace for many Irish communities. Tell me, Archbishop, about your childhood growing up in Iraq as a Catholic. What are your memories of that? And, were you conscious of being a minority community?
I was born in Baghdad, and Baghdad is a big city. I can't say it's a secular in a sense, but Baghdad holds at that time many people from different components. As a Christian family, we were forced to leave our villages in the 60s and 70s because of war between in that area between the Kurdish fighters and the central government. So we had to evacuate most of these villages. We went to big cities like Mosul and Baghdad, and my family settled in Baghdad with thousands of Christian families who fled that violence. We grew up in a quite open-minded environment in a way. We used to go to churches. Of course, it's important to know if you meet an Iraqi Christians, this would mean that this family is a Christian all the way through the history. So, because here evangelization is forbidden within the Islamic world, so you can't really convert. It's always one way of convert to Islam. But so we used to go to the churches celebrating all the events. I used to be at the church when I was like five years old, and I liked to be there. In a way, the example of the priest was one of the still what we call blessed memories that I have of that priest. Then at the age of 12, I joined the minor seminary, and we continued the middle years and the secondary year. And meanwhile, we were, of course, during the formation program. I finished secondary school and then immediately joined the philosophy and theology program. Uh, During that time, talking about Christian, Muslim, Shia, Sunnah, that was really quite delicate. I mean, it was really forbidden in a way. Ba'ath regime had a very strict policy when it comes to that issue. However, in 1993, and after Saddam lost a lot of what we called credits with the Arab countries and lost the Gulf War, he started the Islamization campaign, and that hit the Christians a lot. For example, banning alcohol, having more of Islamic text to the curriculum. Like, for example, once you start the primary and the middle years and secondary school, by 12 years, you would come to memorize Quran, because most of these verses would be in Arabic language course, Arabic literature course, grammar Arabic. So you can, it's a way of getting behind. And that was, people would say our time was much better. It's not, and because we were what we call politically quiet community as a Christians. We had zero influence on like oppositions and stuff like that. So that's why that bring the what we call the trust of the government in the Christians, the trust of the community in the Christians. Until now, Christians, they have this really great what you call reputations of being honest, peaceful, trustworthy people in that sense. But in 1993, that was a turning point too. And so we had the largest Christian campaign of immigrating and leaving country started in 1993. And they went to, of course, we had a center in Detroit and California and Australia and Canada. But since then, it grows. We have today like some 500,000 Chaldeans, for example, in Detroit and just in America and Canada, 100,000 in Australia, 100,000 in Europe. 2003 was what we call the year of changing the regime. By August 2004, they start bombing churches and kidnapping priests, kidnapping bishops, kidnapping Christians. Around 1,200 people were killed. Christians were killed, and many, of course, Muslims, which would really left a wound in the memory of the Christians, and people start leaving. 2010, the massacre of Our Lady in Baghdad. 2014, ISIS. All of these, what to call, events left the Christians very vulnerable. 2/3 of the Christians today are abroad. People would say less than 250,000, which is a big number, just left after, like in 2003, we were around 1 million and 1 million something. But today, that number dropped dramatically.
And in terms of behaviors and attitudes, just when comparing your adolescence in Iraq and present in Iraq, what are the differences in attitude that you're now facing in the 21st century in Iraq compared to when you were an adolescent?
Well, today, one of the big challenge is the survival of the Christian community. Being number put us in a lot of what we call political, social, economical pressure, because you are marginalized, you are even put under pressure when it comes to jobs, when it comes to qualified people being really appreciated in the way, when it comes to certain, for example, even trade, you cannot compete. You cannot compete with all of the environment around you, because everyone is in a way trying to survive. And in that situation, it would be really, really very difficult for us to survive. Today, that's why today, for example, we would always stress the point that the church should lead when it comes to education, when it comes also to be an effective missionary in the way that we live our Christianity. We have the trust of the large Christian Muslim community in our education system and in our health system. And that's, of course, I would say, one of the possibilities and chances for the church to be active there and to try to evangelize. It's a big challenge, but today we thank God. For example, we have some 18 schools around the country, so 3 hospitals. When people would come and they see the kind of service, the way that we really deal, they would say, wow, those Christians have been able to turn that challenge, that way of suffering, to a way of being really active members of the community. Because the big challenge, I would say, is to see ourselves as a victim always. And that's really sad. That's really sad.
Now, you mentioned evangelization there, and obviously, in an Islamic environment, it's forbidden for Muslims to convert to Christianity. Does the work of the church, particularly that outreach work in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, in terms of social welfare, does that create a curiosity among Muslims to find out more about Christianity?
Yes, and that's why people would come. That's why people would come more and would ask about who we are, why we are like this, why we present the way that we are, and they would say, tell us more about this. We need to know more. We need to know more about Christianity. Of course, today with the social media, it's one of the chances to know more, and we have so many people who use the media to preach and to also to inform Muslims in a language that the Muslims would understand about Christian and Christianity. But we as a church, yes, we don't go out, but we receive. We don't really initiate, but we welcome. And for example, we worked with the Aid to the Church in Need to prepare our curriculum for design especially for people who would like to know Christ and who have zero information. And it's not it's quite a friendly text, quite really direct, obvious in the way, and it's been translated to different languages. Even they use it, for example, in Europe, but we have the Arabic text. So we take it from there. And when it comes to baptism, we tell them, listen, this is really quite dangerous situation. If you try to go further, you put yourself in danger. You put yourself in danger of, for example, be beheaded by your own family. And they said, yes, we are ready. We are ready for that. And when we try to put obstacles, it's a way of trying. But at the end, when they come and tell you, who are you to prevent us from Christ? Oh, no, I give up. In that situation, I give up. We baptize, but of course they would on identity. They would, I mean, on car, their political, or what you call public identity. They would still remain Muslims, but deep inside, they are Christians.
You talked there about the bloody and gruesome retribution for some people if they adopt Christianity there. Talk to us a little about the terrorist activity over where you're facing and how, I suppose, the methods that they use to extract the people's fear and that power.
That was obvious in 2000, from 2010 to 2014. Especially in an area like Mosul. More and more of pressure on Christians, like the veil, and also try to really squeeze on Christian business. But in 2014 was obvious in Mosul and Nineveh Plain. Convert to Islam, or you pay taxation, jizya, that, or face the sword. And our Christian community, they said no. Not the 3, they left everything and kept Christ. That was quite obvious. And when ISIS was defeated, we thank God it's not there. But the problem is that those who left Mosul, they don't like to go back again. I mean, in 2003, we had around 5,000 families in Mosul, in the city of Mosul. Today, hardly 50 families. That's the way. So and from 2000, from 2004 the bombing of the churches, the kidnapping, the killing. That was quite. That the message was, you have no place here.
Mhm.
But by 2014 was quite obvious. I mean,
Talk to me, Your Excellency, about it. A very practical difficulty that must arise because the community is shrinking. You say in Mosul there maybe like 50 families. How is it possible for the young Christian people to get married? I mean, how do they, if the community is so small, how do they find a spouse?
of course, here in this area, like where we live in Erbil, like or Duhok and Suleimania, Zaho, you would have a different environment in a way. I mean, we have the largest Christian gathering, for example, in Ankara, some 8,000 families gathered in one enclave. So the number of the marriages, for example, in the diocese would go 60 to 70 a year. Of course, before it was more and this. Most of the but when you go to area where you have like less and less, the church and church activities would be one of the area, beside being a relative or friends and social media. But church activities would be one of the area where they trust each other and find, for example, a suitable partner, husband and wife, future husband and wife to marry. But we help on this. We help also by having all of these. Like we have the Ankara Youth Gathering, which is a yearly youth gathering of, it was 1,500 young people from 66 parishes around the country. But the last 2 years, we decided to lower the number to have more encounter one-to-one among the young people. So some 700 young people would gather a year. We couldn't hold it this year because it was supposed to be in March, and because of the war now, we pushed it to July. Please God, we will be able to really to hold that conference. But yeah, church is one of the area where we help the young people to see each other as well.
And of
And
course,
I,
that's
I
you.
know, Archbishop, that you work very closely with Aid to the Church in Need. And, Aid to the Church in Need benefactors obviously feel very strongly about helping the church in Iraq. Talk to me about the kind of work that Aid to the Church in Need supports. And I'm thinking particularly of the University of Erbil.
My work with Church in Need goes back to 2002 when I was a parish priest in Baghdad. They've helped me to renovate the Catechism Center at that time, and in my parish, Marilia parish in southern part of Baghdad. They worked with us also in pastoral and evangelization training, the catechism, providing catechist books, different type of activities. In 2014, of course, people were in need also whenever there is like a renovation, whenever there is a need for buses, books and printing. Yes, we always rely on Church in Need. They've helped me, and still with the formation of the seminarians and priests, and that's also a big help for us, not just me, but for many bishops in here in Iraq. 2014, they were the first arrived group when ISIS attacked, and they came and saw the situation, and so the help went on providing food, providing shelter, different and medicine, and also building 8 schools immediately at that time, until the returning of the people to their villages, where they helped also rebuilding. For me today, Aid to the Church in Need is helping me in with the catechism program. So the catechism program of the diocese, which is one of the most active and program, is supported by Aid to the Church in Need. Ankara Youth meeting, which is an important meeting, as I say, to Iraqi Christian young people, and for the university. Catholic University in Erbil, helping, providing scholarships for the young Christians from different places of Iraq, especially in the plain, allowing them, giving them the chance to study in a different departments here, which is it's really a big blessing, and I'm grateful for all the big help that I'm receiving and my community is receiving from you.
Of course, this week is a very holy and solemn week, as Sunday marked the beginning of Holy Week. And I saw there were reports coming out of Iraq, and especially they circulated in Catholic media about celebrations being curtailed in some dioceses in Iraq because of the war in Iran. How has the recent installment of war in Iran affected Catholics in Iraq, especially around Holy Week? Were you able to practice freely?
Well, from the beginning of this war, we canceled all the pastoral catechism program and gatherings in the diocese. We canceled the youth. We canceled the choir. Unfortunately, like a convent was hit by a drone. The housing complex belonged to the church also was hit by the drone. Maintaining the safety of the people, we tried to limit all of this. The big gathering of the Palm Sunday, which is well known in Iraq, there is a parade of almost 2,500 children in the streets of Ankawa on Saturday, Palm Sunday. That was cancelled. So we ask each parish, please limit the celebration within the parish, not to go out. But that parade, people would wait because all the church leaders, we come together and walk the streets of Ankawa chanting for. And this week also, we had, instead of having one mass a day, it's 2 masses, so to allow people to come in a different time, morning and in the afternoon. So the same thing when it comes to Holy Thursday and Good Friday and the Vigil. We would make some differences in the timing of the mass and have more masses to allow people to come at a different time, because of the big gathering, the panic. It's not just the safety, but the panic when all of these missiles and drones would be targeted and dealt with. Usually the sound is horrible. People would immediately jump off to fear. So maintaining the safety of the people is a priority for us now.
And Western culture very, very well, Archbishop, Western Europe, North America, for example. And that we've become very sensitive in Western culture to ideas around social justice, equality, inclusion, human rights. And yet it seems that when it comes to the topic of Christian persecution or Christians who are suffering when they're in a minority in various parts of the world, particularly in the Middle East, it seems that there's a reluctance to talk about that, or Western politicians don't want to focus on that. Is that something that you experience?
Not, not in every place, but yes, it's a fact. It's a fact, and that's why, for example, at the beginning of 2014, 2015, I used to travel a lot and to make people aware of the situation. But then by 2016, I started to limit my visit, and raising awareness was only for the places who are willing to listen. Because, as you said rightly, not everyone is interested, and some people would even question the way that the things is going, and it's kind of third, fourth subject in their interest in that sense. But yeah, on the other hand, well, we have still some people who would love to know more about this and to follow and commit themselves in that.
One of the blessings, I suppose, about working for Aid to the Church in Need is that you get to go around to parishes all over the world. And in Ireland, I go around to parishes a lot, and I regularly preach and you have conversations with people, Irish Catholics, who go to Mass every week, and the Catholic faith is a very integral part of their lives. But I remember having a conversation with one, and she had no idea that there were Christians in Iraq. So we're starting, really
Yeah.
from the start here in Ireland. We don't really have a lot of information about Christians around the world, and I presume that's the same everywhere else. How would you like to see this better addressed in the future, and just in terms of education for our fellow Catholics in the West about your plight and suffering, especially in places like the Middle East?
Well, I think I would still encourage you to continue the way that you are doing. It's not just about we need help for those persecuted Christians, but also to tell them where they are, those Christians, who they are, those Christians, the history, the culture, the heritage. That's important. Sharing our story with your benefactors is really important, and in a way just getting them aware of the situation, and that helped them also to spread the news. So I encourage you to continue this way of going parish to parish, and sometimes, and of course, from our side, whenever there is a chance for us to talk and speak, we are ready, and it's for me also a chance to thank you and thank other offices like in Holland, in Germany, in France, in Sweden, in Portugal, in Spain, in so many places, and also in America. That's why I was invited by Aid to the Church in Need, and to go around the parishes and to share the story of the persecuted Christians, not just in Iraq, but of course, the most persecuted religion today in the world are the Christians. So, and that's, I would say, a big part of spreading that story is thanks to the Church in Need, who during for kept this annual report of forgotten, persecuted, and forgotten, always updated with figures and numbers, and that's a big help also.
I was very struck when you said there about, when particularly when ISIS came to the Nineveh Plains, and, Christians there, they really lost everything. But you said the thing they didn't lose was Christ. So you're shepherds to people who really have risked everything to hold on to their faith. And yet in many Western countries like Ireland, for example, we sometimes say now that God is missing but not missed. What would you say to Irish Catholics who perhaps are living their faith in a very secular culture like Ireland? What inspiration can they take from Iraqi Christians?
Uh, I one of the real experience that we have, and we've heard it from so many families who traveled all the way, like 14 hours walk from their villages to Ankawa, to the safety of Ankawa. They've said we felt the strong presence of God among us when we were walking that way. Yes, difficulties from behind, difficulties around, unknown future, but we kept walking, believing that He is with us, and it's the same experience. Yes, in the secular environment that you live, a lots of challenges, pressure from everywhere, but believing that He is with us and among us, and walking with us, and giving us the help to give the respond with joy. Of course, that's most important. To live our Christian faith in joy. This would send a message. Yes, despite every challenge that we face, He is with us.
Thank you very much for your insightful reflections this morning, Archbishop Warda. You are a very firm ally of Aid to the Church in Need, and we're delighted to have you on to speak with us.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Michael, and wish you a blessed Easter for you and for your family, and for all our benefactors, and for all who are really praying for the persecuted Christians and for us.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in this week for the Faith Under Fire podcast. And thank you for putting the persecuted church first for a few moments of your week. So for me, Brandon Scott.
And for me, Michael Kelly.
Please do subscribe, and we hope to see you again very soon.
Okay.